The divisional round, I believe, lived up to its hype. Mike Giardi, Will Parkinson here at the All 32 podcast as we get ready for the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship next week, and also the Senior Bowl. Hello, I know a few people, including these two, who will be there in Mobile, Alabama. A reminder that this program brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. And Game Time, best tickets, best prices to get you in to see any event you want to see. Before we get into the games from this weekend, Will, let's get a quick coaching update and then a New England Patriot minute, if you will. I'll start with you and the Jets. Aaron Glenn coming in for an in-person interview. We're taping this on Monday afternoon, 5 o'clock. He is due in to the Jets facility on Tuesday. Feels like, Will, this is one of those situations, considering how hot New Orleans is for Aaron Glenn as well, that if you get Aaron Glenn in the building, if you're the Jets, you better make sure he doesn't leave until he's got that 5-year contract.
Yeah, it's funny. Normally I hate don't let him leave the building. You lock him down in there and don't let him leave until he signs on the dotted line. You force him into it and the whole thing. I think that's overstated. I think a lot of times, if you're confident, if you have a really good job, like, people are going to want your job. But as we've seen throughout this process, it seems like the Jets are not a job people don't. It isn't a bad job, but it's not the most attractive job because everyone's talked a lot about owner and, hey, it's the Jets, right? Whatever. That stuff I don't really think actually plays into it. I think they don't have a quarterback they don't have a solidified guy for even the next 2 to 3 years who's going to be your guy. And I think that's played a large role in the Liam Cohen, Cliff Kingsbury types, and Ben Johnson not being, not wanting to interview for the Jets job or not being requested because back channel told you. Right. Aaron Glenn has said before this is his dream job. Again, long story short, was the first round pick of the Jets in 1994. Was a Parcells guy through and through. Was a Pro Bowler when they went to the championship game in '98, and got a scouting start, with the Jets and this whole thing. The Jets really felt like Mike Vrabel was option one, and 1A, 1B, whatever it was. And I think at the time they felt like the Patriots were not going to fire Gerard Mayo. I think we all believed up until maybe the Chargers game that Mayo was going to get another year. The Jets felt like if we can give him, we're going to pay him and give him this opportunity. And, our job is better than Chicago because he can have ultimate power with his guy, and so on and so forth. Very much what he got in New England, the Jets felt like they could have given him. Obviously goes to New England. I think everyone knew as soon as Vrabel got fired. As soon as Mayo got fired, it was over. And Glenn has been kind of the prohibitive favorite amongst media and fans. But again, reading the tea leaves of dream job, he's a Parcells guy, the whole thing. Right now, because of the way the market's shaped, the Jets feel like they're going to hire head coach before GM, and it's going to be a pairing. Just because, yes, there's more coaching. There's more coaching, vacancies at the moment. The Raiders are the only left GM opening left. The Raiders feels like John Spytek's probably the guy there. I'm sure it felt like the Raiders probably thought Ben Johnson and Lance Newmark were going to be that pairing. That he was Ben Johnson's pick. It seems like prohibitive pick to be the GM. So Glenn will interview tomorrow. So will Newmark. If Glenn leaves the building tomorrow without a deal, he's probably the Saints coach Wednesday, right? It feels like it's Schefter had the report out this morning on McAfee, and then we can move on, off the Jets. But he had the report. The Jets had basically been in this holding pattern for almost a week now, where they interviewed 1 million candidates, and they're still interviewing candidates over the weekend, but the tier 1 guys that were the favorites. There's kind of just this holding pattern. No second round interviews were being requested. Everyone's kind of confused. They finished up Friday, McCown, Flores. That was the last of the guys. And I don't think anyone expected the Lions to lose, as we'll get into. So Glenn became readily available, as does Ben Johnson. And Schefter had the report before, obviously we'll get to Ben Johnson and the Bears, but they'll be both getting a head coach job by the middle of the week. And likely Glenn is either the Jets or the Saints coach within the next 48 hours. I still have a little bit of reservations that the Jets would. I really like Aaron Glenn. I think he's a really good hire. He would be a really good hire for the Jets. Do I think that Aaron Glenn getting to pick his GM in layman's terms is what I envisioned maybe going in the offseason? No, but they're desperate. They've not made the playoffs in 14 years. And if you want Aaron Glenn, they're going to have to get someone that sees eye to eye with him. Mike, I don't know how you feel. I always worry a little bit, and this is in New England too. I worry about this now. I worry about this. You want these guys to challenge each other a little bit, not just see every single thing the same. And it's like an echo chamber. Do you worry at all with that? If the Jets bring in a guy like Glenn, that's going to get in Newmark and Detroit, was there forever, and they were horrible. And then the last 3 years, and obviously the year in Washington, it's like, now he's like a hot candidate. And a couple years ago, like probably ceiling was a number 2.
Yeah, it happens a lot. I think one of the things that when Vrabel had his introductory press conference and he was talking about just his coaching staff in general and then sort of the vision with the front office, and he's like, I don't want everyone to be like me. I don't want everyone to think like me. And this goes for coaches, and this goes for front office. So you definitely need that. Wait, are we sure we should be doing that? Or why would you do that? No, you know what? Don't do that. And then you have the argument, like, this is what we want to do. Why do you want to do it? No, this is why we shouldn't do it. And have that conversation. And then if you need a tiebreaker, you bring in whoever the tiebreaker person is, whether it's ownership or someone else in the front office or what have you. And when you go head coach first and then have him bring in his GM, it's like, you're doing my bidding. And that, look, for the Patriots, that could be very much the case with Vrabel, as Ryan Cowden has already signed his contract and has been in the office for the last week working with Elliot Wolf and Matt Groh, who were the 2 holdovers, and Patrick Stewart, the holdovers from the front office. So, yeah, that definitely would concern me. But flip side is, who, if not Glenn? And I've told you I have reservations about Brian Flores in that market. And look, again, people keep saying he's learned a lot. Fine. He needs to show me it. That's a difficult one to sort of show me that you figured out all the things that went wrong in Miami with the way your relationships were with ownership, front office, coaching staff, and players. I mean, it was literally, you hit all 4 of those things. You're going to fix all those 4 things the next time around. New York, probably not the best place to do that.
Like the one name that keeps popping up, which is driving me insane. Arthur Smith is like,
he was the second choice, right? He was the candidate here. Saleh was the first choice, and he was the second.
So he was the runner-up in 21. Graziano had an article that he was the runner-up for the Dolphins job in 16. Arthur Smith was the assistant tight ends coach. That had to be a mistake. No one knew who Arthur Smith was in 2016 other than his dad was a billionaire. If the Jets go the Arthur Smith route, however you want to pronounce it, they will likely be picking in the top 5 next year, and the playoff drought. They will be looking for a new coach in 48 and 24 months. That is as disastrous of Aaron Glenn might not be a perfect candidate. I don't think there is a perfect candidate. That's why most of these guys are on the market looking for a job. Even Mike Vrabel wasn't perfect. None of these guys are.
Yep.
I don't know how you sell the fan base on Arthur Smith. I don't even know that he's that great of a coordinator. Everyone's like, did anyone watch the Steelers play this year? They were extremely boring on offense. The Falcons were a proverbial 7-10 team for 3 straight years under him. And the Titans the last year before he got the job were not good on offense. So I don't know. Am I missing something here? Like, why is his name and Ryan Grigson and some of these guys' names? Is it just agents? Like, can you feel? I don't get it. I don't know what I'm missing.
Well, I mean, it definitely feels like an agent thing. And then it's also, do owners look at this and say, previous head coaching experience, it wasn't terrible. Like, there's room for growth here. And if he goes in and has a great interview, then maybe you start to think yourself, oh, we found the next guy who's on his second job is going to be way better than he was in his first job. But to me, I think that's about as unimaginative a hire as possible. And I think it does nothing to move the needle for the Jets. And not that you need to needle move, but you need to get someone in there who's going to take some charge. I don't know that Arthur's that guy. He's never struck me as that guy. So I think he's best served right where he is, which is to be an offensive coordinator. And that's that. Quickly on the Patriots, not really a whole lot to share in terms of what's going on. Offensive coordinator process moving slowly. As Vrabel said, there's no timetable for this. We're going to go through the process.
Still expect McDaniels, right?
I mean, I think he's still the odds-on favorite, but I don't think it's as much of a slam dunk as maybe I previously thought a week ago. He has brought in, we know, 2 interviews that have happened already. Thomas Brown, of course, the interim head coach for the Bears, who's now looking for a job. He comes from the McVay tree. He was over with McVay in 2020, moved on to Carolina in 2023 to be the OC under Frank Reich. Reich was calling the plays. It didn't go well. He gave it to Brown. Brown, first game he called the plays, they won the game, sent him a game ball. I think 2 games later, Brown had the thing revoked from him again, and Reich was calling plays. And then, of course, he later got fired that year. Brown moved on to be the passing game coordinator for the Bears and then became the interim head coach after they fired Eberflus. They also interviewed Marcus Brady, who's the passing game coordinator with the Chargers. I don't get that. I mean, I don't get it. I just don't get it. He has not struck me as someone who I would want to hand it over to. Obviously, in part fulfills the Rooney Rule, as does Brown. So whatever. McDaniels, as of right now, has not, at least as far as I know, on Monday at 5:13, has not yet officially met with the Patriots, but that's moving slowly. Same thing with the defensive coordinator situation. Terrell Williams, who's the run game coordinator for the Lions, he was the D-line coach for Vrabel for 6 years, became the assistant head coach in 2023. The Titans, after they fired Vrabel, let him get out of his contract to go join Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, who he and Brad Holmes crossed paths at North Carolina AT&T in I don't even know what, 1993 or something like that. He's an interesting one, but again, only been a defensive line position coach, had the assistant head coach, now has had the run game coordinator thing, never been a coordinator. So very slow process there with the Patriots. One other bit of news, Jeremy Springer, their special teams coordinator, will remain with the football team. That came down earlier today. Well, officially earlier today. Did a great job for them. They were 32nd and 28th in DVOA the last 2 years of Belichick on special teams. He improved them to 13th. Brendan Schooler became an all-pro. Marcus Jones, a very good returner. So they were a much better team. Had a couple rookies that were day one starters, if you will, on special teams. So that's where we are with the Patriots. Slow process, as we had, as I mentioned.
He should take it slow. Get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, there's no bigger hire than the OC for what you're doing, and for Mike being a defensive guy first. Make sure you get that right, because you want to be paired up with Drake and have Drake take that next step.
I feel like it's even like a guy like Dan Pitcher they requested last year. He obviously basically kind of told them, thanks, I'm good on this random. Why is he not? To me, he's a guy aren't you saying, dude, Burrow this year he gets promotion to OC, but obviously he's really, I mean, from my understanding, is more involved in third. Joe Burrow, they see getting Joe ready every week, and then third down and red zone stuff. He's very heavily involved in the play calling. He's this offense is, the Bengals are really fun to watch, obviously, and I know they have a lot of talent. But I feel like he'd be more inclined to be like, hey, man, listen, Northeast guy, obviously Cortland guy, so I'm biased and whatever. But he's a name that, probably it stunk they missed out on last year. But if you're him, it's Zach Taylor's probably a bad start away from getting fired. But, are you sure you'd be getting promoted? I don't know. That'd be, for me, if I was the Patriots, Pitcher might get pulled in 2 years to a head coaching job, but this is a guy that Joe Burrow swears by, and you can say, if we're talking about Joe Brady for head coaching stuff, he's a quarterback merchant. That's a lot of what you see on guys like a Joe Brady in Buffalo. I don't know. I'd give Pitcher. If I was Mike Vrabel, I'd call up Dan Pitcher and be like, listen, you're gonna get freedom to call the plays. You have a chance to develop Drake May. If you do it right, you'll be a head coach in 2 years, and the Patriots will have a superstar quarterback. That to me is one that would really interest me. Bringing over Burrow's very mobile, but he's not a runner. May can run, but you'd like to see him, be a guy that plays a lot like Joe Burrow. I don't know. That'd be one that I would keep my eye on, where I would at least, if I was the Patriots, I would at least try again after last year.
You'd have to nail down what pitcher wants to run, right? Because what they run in Cincinnati, even though Zach comes from the McVay tree,
not really.
It's the LSU offense, right? Burrow wants to be in gun. He wants to have multiple wideouts out there on every single play. He wants that option. That's not what we would consider West Coast. Although, again, young quarterback tends to simplify things when you're in gun and teams have to declare. I'll give you two more names to keep an eye on here as we go forward, and that's now with the Rams being eliminated from the playoffs, which we're going to get to in a couple minutes here. Nick Haley, who is their passing game coordinator, and Dave Ragone, who is their quarterbacks coach. The big ragu, as I like to call him, was the OC for Atlanta under Arthur Smith for a couple of years. Obviously, Arthur was calling the plays, right? So, but now dealing with quarterbacks, and as I've mentioned before, I think I want someone that has experience coaching quarterbacks because of how important Drake is and how much time the offensive coordinator and the quarterback spend together. And obviously, Caley was the guy they wanted last year under Gerard Mayo. He decided to stay in LA. He's got a young family. They like it out there. He got more responsibility and a better title from the Rams, and he's done a good job. Now, again, not spending a ton of time with quarterbacks, but spending more time with quarterbacks now than he ever has. So those are two names to keep in mind for the Patriots. And like we talked about, Vrabel has to get this right because the last couple of years in Tennessee in particular, offense was a disaster. The Todd Downing hire, you just lived it. Todd Downing is not the guy, but he's very loyal to Todd Downing.
I was going to say, I wonder if he gets a
yep.
Oh,
and then,
we'll see. Rodgers played better under Downing. Like,
right. And then Tim Kelly was after Downing moved on, Tim Kelly was the next OC, and they weren't very good under Tim Kelly as well.
That was very polite to say Todd Downing moved on. And
yes. I'm nothing if not polite, right? Hey, look, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. Football season almost over. It's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks also giving away a free pick for the big game. Hint, the big game. I can't say what the big game is. That's how the advertising works. But you know what we're talking about. Where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw for 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can get that real cash with a victory. Prize Picks is your best place, of course, to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You must pick more or less on at least 2 players and up to 6 to win 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your cash. Download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, just download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Just simple, easy. Got to do it. We'll have our picks at the end of the week as we head into the championship weekend. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's go to, I'm knocking over stuff. Let's go to the games from Sunday, and let's go to the game that I was hyped about. Didn't quite live up to the billing. It still was a good heavyweight fight between two really good football teams. Buffalo outlasts Baltimore 27-25. We'll get into the whole Lamar Jackson stuff, but I don't want to start there. I want to give credit to Buffalo for what they did. Ground game, very efficient. They've actually had their 2 best running games in terms of efficiency in the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. In the last 2 weeks, excuse me. So they're playing very good football. They're finding a good balance. We talk about what Allen is able to do, right? You put the cape on him. He's capable of elevating that team. But, man, in fact, I was actually begging, I think, in the second half as they were up by 11 points, like they got a little too conservative. Like, don't take the ball out of Josh's hands that often. But he played a smart game, effective as a runner, not big numbers. But when they needed it, he got it. A couple big completions. Only got sacked once in the game, did not turn the ball over, and just a sound football game from the Buffalo Bills until the end when it got a little dicey, which tends to happen with that team. They had the entire fan base with their heart in their mouth there for that last drive, but a big win, and now for the 4th time in 5 years, them in Kansas City again in the AFC title game.
Yeah, they Josh almost had a I don't know if you've ever seen the Spider-Man meme where it's like the mask is
yes.
He tried to flip that ball, and I'm like, dude,
I know, right? Like, Tony Romo lost his mind. He's like, dude, Lamar, Josh, any of you, don't do that. Don't ever do that.
Tony Romo, who probably works for the Bills along with Jim Nantz. Next week's going to be interesting. It might be a watch on mute situation and play some Tool in the background. But look, I think yesterday was, to me, and no disrespect to the Bills at all, the Bills have had an awesome season. Josh Allen has been one of the 2 best players in football for 20 straight weeks now. Like they've been They've been really well coached. I thought McDermott, generally speaking, was really good yesterday. We'll get to the one decision where the fourth down. I'm curious your thoughts on that. I thought this was all about Baltimore. I thought Baltimore self-destructed. I think they lose every single time the same way in the playoffs, the same way in the regular season. Every year there's 2 to 3 games where you go, what? Like, look, they also the Raiders, right? The Raiders in week 2 or whatever this year. It was like, what just happened? The turnovers, both Lamar's turnovers were really bad. And I think he was really good for a majority of the game. I thought there was moments in the first half he looked really tight. There was some throws where it was like the one to Henry. I know Derrick Henry should call it that, but and I know maybe
that's a tough thing to ask a 240-pound running back. To
even the Andrews one, in the end, he guided it. It was like not a confident throw at all. And I know Andrews has to catch that, and I get it. But you should have pelted it through his chest and made it so he literally had no choice.
He literally hesitated too. It was like, I have him, and he just was a little clutch before he threw it.
The first drive was so sharp and clean. And you're like, I tweeted, I was like, this is going to be, I thought we were in for Bills Rams part 2, 48-41, whatever it was, because both defenses, frankly, I thought Buffalo's plan was, and I know the one drive they bully balled them, but other than that, it felt like the Bills said, we're going to, Derrick Henry's not beating us. Justice Hill's not beating us. Prove to us you can score 30 plus on the road, and they couldn't. I just felt like there was the drops. It was bad penalties, a sack at the wrong time, a missed tackle, the penalty again. It's a self-inflicted wound on Trey White, but I mean, it was a horrible call, but you shouldn't even been in that spot. Why are you you got to know time, place, situation. Trey White played in Buffalo for a long time. You got to know that crowd's going to be into it. Refs can get influenced. It's big time games. This is what happens. This just to me felt like it was the Ravens. The Ravens were the hottest team in football. I think you could argue, and you have argued, they probably were the best team in football for the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it's been. I think since week 12 or whatever it's been, they were the number 1 defense in football. Lamar is playing out unbelievable. They blew the Steelers off the field. First drive, they go down, and they started self-destructing. And this is what Buffalo, I feel like in the past has done in the playoffs, where they make the mistake. They make the 2 or 3, you can't fumble there. It's the bad penalty here. Andrews obviously is going to get all the criticism. And I think Lamar, thankfully, and I think most people, I thought Bill Simmons made a good point on this morning. I was really happy that Lamar we'll talk about we can talk about the turnovers. And it's like, I don't want to blame it all on Mark Andrews, but I just didn't want the discourse this morning to be like another Lamar. At some point, though, one stat that 0-10 since Lamar became the starter if they're down by 10 at halftime. That to me is a bigger indictment than the playoff stuff, because each playoff game is very different. You know this. You've been doing this a long time. Every game is you just take them in different things. And Lamar's had some really bad playoff performances. I didn't think this was a bad performance by any means. I don't think he's the reason they lost. I also think it's fair to be like, hey man, those 2 turnovers really killed them. And then combine that with the bad penalty on special teams and on Trey White. That's probably 10 points worth. I just feel like if you're a Ravens fan this morning, you're like, dude, this was our shot. We were going to beat KC. We were going to beat Buffalo. We were going to go in with Detroit losing. They probably, I don't know. I feel like you would have picked Baltimore regardless in the Super Bowl. So congrats to Buffalo. They earned it. They avoided the critical mistake. They played clean, sound football. Josh Allen with the Jalen Hurts stat line. It was not the typical Bills, we're going to put up 40 on you and it just a clean, sound football game. They avoided mistakes, and Baltimore self-destructed. And it's at what point, Mike, I'm curious, and I brought this up to you last episode when we were previewing, the blame pie, because this is what you obviously have to do. I give Lamar 30-ish%, because I don't think the turnovers mattered a lot. But at what point is John Harbaugh going to get criticized for being just like Mike Tomlin? They're the same coach. They're awesome. They handle these big personalities. They're in the same rivalry. They've been around forever. They won early in their career. But it's playoff loss after playoff loss after playoff loss is a favorite. And at some point, it can't just be Lamar's fault. It can't just be Mark Andrews. Isn't it him too?
Yeah. Well, so
I hit a lot there. I know.
No. I had more of a problem with Monken yesterday, and all right, the first scripted drive was beautiful, right? Then after that, what are you doing? Felt like they had it was like he was just pulling different levers, like, let's see if this works. Let's see if this works, going down the play sheet and just being like, all right, let's pick one from column A, column B, and column C, see if we can put something together. Then in the second half, really finding their footing, running the ball very well, finally finding some success there, wearing down the Bills a little bit in that regard, although the Bills are pounding their chest today as if they did this awesome job against the run. Derrick Henry still rushed for 84 yards, and at one point, Hill was averaging 10 yards of carries. He had 51 yards on five rushes. But I thought he was a little helter-skelter, and I think in a game like this, when you're playing a really good opponent and you're playing them on the road, you can't have 3 possessions where you're like trying to spin the dial, figuring out what's going to work. So I had a bit of an issue with him. To your point on Lamar, that last drive was beautiful. 88 yards, 27 yards to Wallace, sort of the off platform on the run, and Wallace did a great job of he's on the far left side on the opposite hash, came back across when he saw Lamar scramble, kept himself alive. The 27-yarder, 24-yarder, the 19-yarder to Andrews, and then of course all day to throw the touchdown pass, but literally did not panic, just sat back there until likely came open. And then, there was the hesitation on the 2-point conversion. Andrews has got to catch it. That was interesting because
you think he guided it.
Yeah, he did. And I think because it took a split second longer to get out of his hand, because he sort of clutched, that I would say my feeling is that Andrews probably thought he was close to the out of bounds, and that maybe helped contribute to the drop. I can't say that definitively because Mark Andrews did not talk after the game, and then they had their breakup today, which
the Ravens tweeted before the game, the snow doesn't affect Mark Andrews, and it was like, oh man, I'm curious.
Mark didn't talk after today as well. So
3 times they had the short yardage stuff, right? What about the play calls there? Because when we got to the Rams game, I'm going to crush McVay on his short yardage stuff. The both 2-point conversions, and they had one other one. I'm missing. There's a third one in there that was.
What's funny on the 2-point conversion thing? So look, I don't like the half roll. So the one that he dropped, but it should have been 2 points, right? It was there. The first one, they'd run the ball down the field, right? And they've done it relatively easily. I feel like no one ever just hands it off on a 2-point conversion.
Just won it. That's your whole thing.
It's always there's always that's like, well, we get down here now, even though we just shoved the ball down their throat for whatever it was, 8 plays and 70 yards. Now we got to get cute and we got to throw the ball, or we got to do something difficult. So I think that's just sort of how offensive coordinators' brains work sometimes. And in that case, I think you should have just turned around and handed it off to Derrick Henry and said, go ahead, stop the guy, because you didn't do it on that drive. They've got a long off season ahead of them. Well, your point. And now it's like, now the regular season, and we've talked about this last year coming into the year, it didn't matter. You've got to do it in the postseason. And guess what? They're in the same exact place where they're going to have to do it in the postseason. Let's go to Eagles and Rams. Eagles hang on. Looked like the game was over. Not so much. Rams had a chance inside the 20 in the closing minutes of the game, unable to convert. So Eagles hang on for a 28-22 win. To me, first of all, Saquon Barkley, unbelievable. Just the 68-yard touchdown run was 9 guys in the box? Like, just the guy's ridiculous. Just as he did the first time he played the Rams, completely wore them down. This is going to be weird to say because you've got to give them credit. They're in the NFC Championship game. Their passing offense is completely broken, and it's the quarterback. It is the quarterback. There were a couple drops early that I think maybe got into his head a little bit. But, dude, that's not your job. Your job is to throw the ball. If they don't catch it, then they can deal with the repercussions.
That's how you hear about Jalen Hurts. He's so mentally strong and tough and accountable.
I think he goes into a shell. He's not.
The OC and the quarterback are.
Yes, I'm not. I don't get the Kellen Moore thing. I'll say it a million times. He's probably, like we just said, he could be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Okay.
Dak is probably so angry. He's just sitting there. Dak's probably sitting working out, hip thrusting in the air in his gym. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, so he's not an elite processor, Hurts. They can't yet somehow their offense, not only is he not willing to throw it into tighter windows, they're not taking it nearly as many shots down the field as they should with AJ Brown. And again, he had one that he could have and then couldn't control when he hit the ground. But like, okay, Kellen Moore, AJ Brown's a beast. He may be a moody beast, but he's a beast. Where are the wide receiver screens? Where's a jet sweep? Where's something? Get him touches and let him feel like he's a part of the game. So maybe some of the concentration lapses or maybe even a lack of effort on a couple balls, maybe that doesn't happen. And again, speaks to AJ, got to like button it up a little bit. Yeah. But like same token, he's been watching this movie all year long. And he's like, my quarterback can't get me the ball. My offense coordinator can't seem to figure out a way to get me the ball. That's a problem. Teams are playing cover 2 shell on them and just saying, okay, go ahead, try to beat us underneath, keep picking us apart. And he doesn't want to do that either. So on top of it, he hurts the knee late, right? And he didn't give a great update. He's like, well, I finished the game. That was the best thing he could say about his knee. So even though he's not the athlete that he was 2 years ago for whatever reason, the legs are still the best part of his game. 44-yard touchdown to start the game, right? You're going to tell me he doesn't have his legs or that he's impaired going into the NFC Championship game, and he's not willing to take these tight window shots and push the ball down the field? I mean, how do you not, if you're just Washington, say, we're sticking 8 in the box and go ahead. We're gonna do everything we can to shut down Saquon, and if you decide to keep it, you as well, but we're going to try to make you beat us on the outside. And if you can, well, God bless, you've got the guys to do it, but you're not doing it.
Yeah, I kind of take the Spags game plan against Houston and just run it against Philly. Like early in the game, we're gonna try to like throw some different things at you from different angles, and we're not letting Joe Mixon and Nico Collins beat us. Anybody else in the field, like the Rams, the one Chris Shula criticism I'd have is, for the most part, I know this is gonna sound weird, but I actually think they did a good job on Saquon like 90% of the time.
Yeah,
they got caught twice with safety from 20 yards deep, having to come up and make Saquon tackle him in the open field. And it was just one-on-one, and you just can't put yourself in that situation. You got to just try to avoid it. I want to give Jared Verse. Losing Braden Fisk killed the Rams early in the game once he went down. It was like, that's one of their, like, I'm going to beat you up for 60 minutes, guys. And when you lose him, they were able to get a little bit more, right when he went out of the game, they obviously, get the 68-yarder. Jared Verse was unbelievable. He's a guy who talked a lot of trash before the game, and I thought was the best player on the field outside of Saquon Barkley on either team.
Wait a minute. What about Jalen Carter? Couldn't freaking block the dude.
He was unbelievable as well. Here's my issue with Philly, and I felt this way for a while. I don't think Hurts is very good. I think he's like the 15th best quarterback in the league, which is good. Sorry, I should say he's fine. He is a league average.
He's not what people thought he was going to be after taking him to the Super Bowl a couple years ago.
Unfortunately, and I know, like, this is going to be classic. This isn't, old man on the couch take. I understand Jalen Hurts had the concussion, and I understand he has gotten beat up this year and last year. Every time he leaves the pocket, he slides right away. And I know it's probably the right thing long-term to keep yourself healthy for 15, 16 years in the NFL to slide more than that. But that's not his game. And I feel like there's a lot of chances for, like, it's like one-on-one with her. He goes down. He's really easy to tackle now in the backfield. I know he had the long run to start the game, but after that, it was like he kind of starts to shell a little bit. The safety was all on Kellen Moore. I don't want to call him an idiot because I think that's extremely harsh, but this is right after your quarterback just got banged up. He's not moving right yet. He hasn't started to feel it. I mean, I'm not sure what Hurts is doing. He had A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was. Wide open. He's just staring at him, doesn't throw it. That almost, that can flip the game easily if Stafford doesn't fumble. I just think we said going into this game, the reason I liked the Rams was because a lot of what they did, it worked. Like, they were there. They had a couple of drops. The weather was obviously more of a factor than I don't think either of us thought they were going to get a half a foot of snow.
No.
The one thing I will say with the Rams, and this is, I don't know if Stafford's going to play next year. That's not inside it, whatever. That contract was done 2 years ago, so he basically could retire whenever he wanted, and like they wouldn't get screwed. He'd get a bump for this year and last year. I don't know if they're going to redo another deal with him, and like that's the Darnold team to me. That's the like classic. Like maybe Stafford has said, "I'll give you one more year." Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. The fact that we're even having the questions about it, to me, I feel like he was going to retire after the Super Bowl, and they were like, "Dude, we can't lose you after 1 year."
Right.
And all those picks. Kyren Williams this offseason, he's a great back. He's really good. He's extremely tough, incredible dude. The fumbles are a huge problem. I know it's only 4, but 3 against the Eagles. I'm not mistaken. Like it killed them both games. It's a momentum. It's possessions you can't get back. And the one other thing with the Eagles that I'm very concerned about because of what Washington has been with Jaden Daniels. When it gets to the time where like a team's doing a 2-minute drive before the half, and where they don't play as aggressive, they can't just light you up with pressure. Teams pick them apart. I mean, it's like a joke. It's like the Rams went down twice. I mean, I know Stafford had the airmailed the one at the end there, and after a Puka drop, but like I thought the Rams were going to win that game because the Eagles couldn't. All of a sudden, it was like they had no pass rush, no nothing. Fangio is going to have to like somehow adjust to that end of the half stuff because Jaden Daniels right now is playing like prime Tom Brady when it comes to fourth downs and got to have it drive. So. Yeah, look, Philly will be favored. They should be. They'll be at home. They steamrolled Washington the first time. I felt like the score was closer than the game was felt. Daniels was hurt that week, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And the Rams' future is really bright. Les Snead, I think, is probably the best GM in football. I don't think we ever talk about him. We talk about Veach and all these other guys, and like he hit 8 of the last 10 picks they've hit on. Like it's insane, and whatever. But the Stafford question mark, and again, we'll address it once the playoffs are over. But that is a huge domino in the NFC because I don't know. I'd pick them to win the NFC West again next year. Those guys are only going to get better, right? And maybe they add a receiver or whatever. If you're Philly, Hurts question mark, right? The injury, and I wonder if Washington just watches that and says like you said, Saquon, we are going to make sure we need AJ Brown's going to have to go with. Remember, I believe it was last year, Mike, if I'm not mistaken. I think you brought this up like 2 months ago or whenever the A.J. Brown Hurts stuff first came up. I believe Washington last year, they were a disaster. But that was the game last year right after this happened last year with A.J. Brown Hurts. And A.J. Brown was like a superhuman. He had a one-handed touchdown. Yep. They might need that on Sunday because Washington's house money rolling. And Philly feels like you're left sitting there going,
their roster is better. You should be better. You're just not.
It's the best roster in the league, and I actually don't think it's particularly close.
Yeah, I think it's a quarterback coordinator problem, but I think it's more on the quarterback just in terms of he's just not playing well. He's not playing confidently. I don't think they're very confident in him. Let's hit game time before we move on here. Obviously, playoff games. We're down to the nitty gritty here. You want to go to see a playoff game? You want to go NHL, NBA? Concerts, whatever, we got the place to do it for you. One-stop shopping. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. You can see exactly where you're sitting when you're looking at tickets, and you don't have to keep resetting the search engines. It's way easier than anybody else can do it. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Don't want to spend too much time on this, but Ben Johnson is official. He is going to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. We talked about this, 6 weeks ago. We thought this was going to be the likely spot. Then there was some serious push, I think, over the last couple of weeks from Las Vegas, in particular, because of Tom Brady, to get Ben Johnson in the building. Told he had a terrific interview with them, virtual interview, obviously, because he was still unable to do the in-person stuff. But this comes down to one simple thing, doesn't it, in Chicago? Vegas can't offer you the quarterback. Maybe they can figure out a way to get one, but they don't have one. The Chicago Bears have Caleb Williams, and for all we can say about the kind of year he had, and it was definitely a roller coaster, Jaden's better this year. Drake probably at points played better. Bo Nix certainly had a really good year, but Caleb's ceiling is Ben Johnson.
Caleb Ben Johnson, though.
I think Ben will make it. Like, I think that's what he's got to do, right? You got to figure that part of it out. And obviously one of the big issues for Caleb this year was just holding on to the ball too long. Like, that's going to be that'll be a challenge because he got into some habits this year that, or he carried them over from USC because that's what he had to do at USC, especially that last year, to try to make that offense productive. But I think this really does come down to Ben Johnson looks at it and says, they can offer me something that nobody else who had an opening has, and that's a number one pick, a quarterback who's coming off a rookie year, and I can still feel like I can mold him into what I want.
Yeah, we talked about this when they fired our boy Eberflus. We said Ben Johnson's the name, right? You go all in and say he's the hottest name. I have serious reservations about Ben Johnson as a head coach. We will talk about this game right after this. I thought Ben Johnson was terrible on Saturday night, and I think Aaron Glenn got all the heat. And I'm not saying this, he's going to be the Jets head coach. No. They lost every single – I mean, there's nobody left in that Lions defense that was like – I mean, you –
Well, yeah, you know what? So let's just get into it because the Ben Johnson thing, it is what it is.
So right? I just want to say this about Ben Johnson. And the Raiders winning these two meaningless games at the end of the year and then doing what they did, I think may have cost them Ben Johnson. It may have also cost them their dream Dion Shador thing. And again, I don't know that it even would have worked. And I'm not saying would have been, but like it was right there. They were going to be the number 1 or number 2 pick. They were going to get Shador and Dion, or they were going to get Ben Johnson and Dion and or Ben Johnson and Shador, I apologize, or Cam Moore, whatever it is. It was all right there for him. And I hate doing this thing, but like it's happened with the Giants. The Giants had Jaden Daniels or Drake May in their sights, and Tommy DeVito wins a meaningless game, and now
I'll give you can even say it, and the Patriots fine. It was a 3 quarterback. Well, at least we thought it was a 3 quarterback draft. Maybe it was more because of Penix and Nix and what's happened. JJ McCarthy, we haven't seen this year. We didn't get to see this year. But like, there are people that were in Foxboro. Chad Ryland kicks a game-winning 50-yard field goal in Denver on Christmas Eve. It's not a game they wanted to win. I mean, the players wanted to win. I'm sure the coaching staff wanted to win. But I'm saying there were people in the offices who were like, that's not what we wanted, because there were some people in that building that wanted Jaden Daniels. And you lose that game, you end up with the second pick, and now you're picking between Jaden Daniels or Drake May versus you're sitting at 3, Jaden's gone, and now it's like, okay, well, we like this kid too, obviously. Some like them more than Jaden. Others like Jaden more, and the people that like Jaden more are walking around over the last, whatever, for the entire season, but particularly over the last few weeks going, I told you that guy was special, and he has been. So, yeah, you're right. Let's get to that game. Commanders shocked the Lions, the top-seeded Lions, 15-2 wins, 15-win season, 45-31. Got a little crazy there, like just 28 points in the second quarter. We're going to talk about the Lions. But Jaden Daniels is playing superb football. 299 yards passing, 51 rushing. They were 7 for 16 on 3rd and 4th downs, which you'd be just the way Dan's coaching now, like Dan Campbell. Dan Quinn is saying we're going to be aggressive in these situations, but they were all like 4th and manageables. They weren't 4th and 8s, 4th and 10s.
Yeah, he wasn't being an idiot.
Yeah, just very
pragmatic.
Very, very smart. And he's very Lamar-like. I keep, there's 2 weeks in a row where I brought this up where
he's Vince Young with all of the mental traits and the polishness.
I just like I like the way he does still expose himself to a hit or two that I don't want him to, but it's the control with which he runs on some of these scrambles, especially in these 3rd and got to have it or 4th and short, sort of just like picking. He's not like good, but then when he puts the foot in the dirt, he
never puts the foot all the way down the gas. It's like a kind of.
He shifts. He's constantly just like, all right, I need to get 3. And he finds it. He just is playing in such great control. He missed a couple throws in the red zone, which again, when he sort of fully cleans up some of his mechanical stuff, he won't miss those. And then got good luck. I mean, the deep over to De'Ami Brown, where Brown literally had a hand in his face before the ball even hit his hands, but it was like it was 45 yards down the field. You couldn't have put the ball any better. He's just playing awesome football. They are feeding off him. You want to talk about just like this vibe that they have right now? They look at that dude and go, he's better than anybody you got. And because he's better than anybody you got, we think we can win any damn game. And they went into a Detroit, building where the place was nuts. They're desperate for success. That's a really good football team, albeit very beat up. And he controlled the game. He was awesome. And then their defense was opportunistic, right? I mean, 5 turnovers, a couple of those were just Goff, killers, but like they made some plays too. And that's part of it. When you get the opportunity to make the play, you better make it. And they made them when they had to. So credit to them. I don't think anybody would have thought they would have been a 12-win team in the regular season. I don't think anybody thought they could be playing in the NFC Championship game. Even in your, you could be the biggest Commanders honk, and I don't think you would have thought that this was possible, but here it is. It is possible. And then for the Lions, man, just like.
Was this it?
Well, I mean, look, Ben Johnson's already gone. Aaron Glenn's likely gone as well. So
they're going to lose like the whole.
They're going to take assistance with him, right? So now Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes are going to have to figure out how to rebuild this thing on the fly. And I think obviously their defense should be in a much better place next year because they just broke down. No Aiden Hutchinson, McNeil, so forth and so on. And it just, as we talked about on the pod coming into the weekend, so they hadn't played good defense since the calendar turned to December, except for the Week 18 game against Sam and the Vikings. And then we saw Sam have a hard time the next week, and the Vikings have a hard time the next week. So maybe part of them, but also part of what was going on with the Vikings. So, yeah. And then they're also going to have one other problem now. They're going to look at Jared Goff and say, he's good, and he is good. Is he good enough? And when you're in this, I was trying to think of someone I would comp him to. And I'm going back a little bit.
I'm very curious what you're going to say here.
I was going to say Matt Schaub. You think about Matt Schaub and the Texans, when the Texans got rolling for those couple years, right? They were 12-4, 13-3, young J.J. Watt, Arian Foster. Like, they were a really good football team. Mm-hmm. And Matt Schaub put up really nice numbers. Really nice numbers. But in a big spot, Matt Schaub came up small. And Jared Goff has put up – he's obviously had a far better career than Matt Schaub. Not trying to – he was an MVP candidate for 3/4 of the year this year.
Yeah.
But in these moments – he hasn't been good enough. And when he gets sped up like that, the difference was, to me, Will, was very stark when you have someone who's as mobile as Jaden is, able to buy a little bit more time, dance around a little bit, make a play. Jared starts to get pressure and get heated up. He'd done a much better job this year overall, but some of the old traits came up at the worst possible time.
Yeah, this is a weird comp. Is he like Chad Pennington a little bit as well? Really good play action, very accurate. I mean, they're both 66 completion percentage. And it's like the Jets for years, and then eventually with the Dolphins too, it was like really good. Like they, even the playoff, stats are like kind of similar. It felt, but like
the only thing I would say the difference there for me is that Schaub had the arm, and obviously Chad's arm was a problem because of the injuries and stuff. But you're right in terms of Chad was a really good quarterback.
Yeah, he was really good. I mean, like there was years where he was awesome, and like the Jets won the division. They won some playoff games with him, but like eventually, they lose to Rich Gannon a couple times, and they lose to Brady a couple times.
Over the top.
Yeah, it's just look. I'll start with Washington because we're going to talk a lot about them. Obviously, on the later, like we're going to do. Obviously, other than the coaching hires, that'll be all we're talking about on Thursday or Friday. I think Washington was peak Dan Quinn in terms of his defense. They'll give up yards, but we will turn you over and we will punch you in the mouth a lot. Mm-hmm. Like very Seattle. Like people forget Dan Quinn was out in Seattle and made Peyton Manning look the worst he's ever looked his entire career. Excuse me. I will say this about Washington. I think they have a real shot on Sunday afternoon, and they're 2 years early. But they've got the right GM, it seems. They've got the right head coach. We'll see if they can retain their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinators who are both interviewing for head coaching jobs, but it feels like they probably will. And they'll have Jaden have the same infrastructure, but they're this is a weird comp. They're a little Detroitish with like, hey, we might return this whole staff to a team that was in the title game a year ago, and they have all this cap space. Like, are they, are they in play for T. Higgins or Debo or these guys?
Yes.
Like, do they add those guys? Are they able to add 2-3 pieces here? Do they Godfather off for the Bengals for Jamar Chase? We've talked about that and those different things. Jaden's special. I would take Jaden Daniels over CJ Stroud and Jordan Love at this exact moment, which is probably extreme hyperbole because it's prisoner of the moment, but he's a better athlete than both of them. And frankly, the arm talent's pretty similar. And I don't know. He's making really good decisions with the football, and he's doing with less. Terry McLaurin's amazing. He's not a top 5 guy in the league, but he's certainly a 1, and he's clutch.
And he's a freaking winner. Just making winning plays.
Mentality is tier 1. That's the guy. Him.
That's what you want all your number 1 receivers to look like. Take Terry McLaurin's attitude and drive and ego and throw it into AJ Brown.
And he's probably the best receiver we've ever seen.
Yeah, forget about it. Forget about it. That guy doesn't stop.
He doesn't stop. I thought Quinn was amazing. I thought he was really good about. We talked so much about the 4th down stuff. I thought he was perfect with that. There was only one that I was like, I don't know. It was the first drive or second drive of the game. I was like, just take the points here. Just take them. You've had a really nice drive. I feel like they're under control a little bit. I'll change to Detroit because I think this is more about Detroit. They were almost double-digit favorites at home. This was year 2. This was supposed to be wide open for them. 1 seed. The AFC are all really good teams. It's a much harder conference, but it felt like Detroit. I don't know. I feel like I was going to pick Detroit no matter who they were going to play, just based on the way they were playing, even with the injuries. Defensively, I thought Aaron Glenn threw a lot at him. I don't know that he was great on Saturday night, but Jaden just handled everything. He was just getting pressure after pressure, and he just was amazing every time. And I just don't know what they're supposed to do. They're down 17 guys that have started games for them, and then they lose 3 guys in the first half. It's at some point, you run out of bodies on defense. You can only scheme so much.
I'm with you 100%. I think
it wasn't perfect.
Aaron is not going to put that game on his resume, but in no way, shape, or form is that preventing him from getting a job. Obviously, for the people who are like, I wonder if that's going to cost him. No, the body of work is too damn good. Plus, we know about the kind of leader he is. But as you mentioned in the beginning, Ben Johnson skated here. Ben Johnson. There were a couple of calls that you're just like, what in the wide world of sports are you doing?
It felt like Ben Johnson was like, I'm going to be a head coach in the next week. And Tom Brady's announcing. I know this isn't crazy, and this is probably overthinking. Tom Brady's announcing, I'm going to show off, look at my bag of tricks. Jameson Williams is extremely talented. And I don't think this I wouldn't say his football or off the field IQ is the sharpest.
Yes. Can I just say
on his hands in a must-have it drive? Must have it. You got to get at least 3 there. You got to cut it to 1 possession. He must have been told, and maybe I'm wrong, and he just went totally rogue. He obviously was told, if you see it, throw it. And it's not like he's reading defenses like he's prime Tom Brady. He's like, why is that the play? Really cool. They had the double Amon-Ra and
oh yeah, the pitch. Beautiful.
Why has Gibbs not touched the ball 30 times? You had to win this game.
Yes. So there's two great points. Gibbs was awesome in that game. He was the 100 yards. Dayton was awesome, but Gibbs was better. Gibbs, every time he's just ball, he could go 70. He made some cuts that were just
your stomach's in your ass the entire time you watch him if you're a Commanders fan.
And the other point, the Jameson Williams one, I'm glad you brought this up. I wrote about this today in Boston Sports Journal, and I was like, that call is fine. It's fine. They've done a lot of stuff that's worked for them, trick plays that work for him. He's not the guy. I don't care if he has the second best arm in the team. He's not the guy to do it because he does. It's the decision making, and I'm like, this guy struggles with decisions. We have a gambling suspension last year, a PED suspension. We have him pulled over this year with an unregistered gun in his car and then acting very entitled because the whole thing was on tape with the cops. He's not
in year 3 in the league. This isn't.
Yeah, he's not the brightest bulb when it comes to this stuff. So I will guarantee you that Ben Johnson probably told him 57 times, if he's open, fling it. If he's not, put the ball under your arm, run, or throw it out of bounds. But you're not, no tight window throws here. You're not jamming the ball in there, but bottom line is you give him the opportunity to have the ball in his hands in that spot, and his brain went pooh, just like it did after he scored the touchdown. And he's doing a sex act on the field. Like, dude, like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah, but when you give a finger point, it's a 15-yard penalty.
Did you, by the way, speaking of that, did you notice how quickly I think it was 2 offensive linemen literally grabbed him? Yeah, they're like, what are you doing, you idiot? Like, 15-yard penalty, you're just begging for it. Like, we just had a touchdown. Like, don't be an idiot.
Just felt like this was the typical, I talked about this, we talked about this a bunch. It just felt like the typical offensive coordinator that falls in love with, why is Goff throwing the ball 40 times? Like, it's the classic, like, everyone crushed Vrabel the other day for when you run, he's talking about being in the lead and you can control the game, and that's why you run the football. You don't want your quarterback throwing 40 times. Goff, when he's 22 of 28 for 255 and 2 touchdowns and maybe a fumble or a pick in there, that's when they're at their best, because it means they're punching them in the mouth, they're running the rock. It felt like they got up and then Washington stormed back. And then it was like, oh, we can't run the football anymore. And it's like, no, dude, Washington's light up front. Like, you need to run the football. You need, like, and you can't get a stop on defense. And you're just like putting your defense in these horrible situations to go shotgun there early in the game and Goff has the strips. It's like, I mean, maybe he was concussed. I don't know. He got absolutely eviscerated. In fact, Teddy Bridgewater was in the game. I'm not saying the Lions won't be back, because I think Campbell's a really good coach. This team's awesome. All that stuff's true. And next year, maybe they get all the injury luck on their side, and it's a different conversation. And Minnesota probably regresses, and Green Bay's probably going to be kind of where they are. And Chicago maybe is better, but they're not quite there yet. Who knows? But, like, I don't know. You kind of expect a lot of these other teams in the NFC to start getting better. Like, Washington's only going to get better, and Philly's not going anywhere amidst some of the quarterback and coach stuff. And Dallas probably rebounds. And what if Penix is awesome? Like, and Atlanta is like, oh, like, Atlanta actually is legit good now, not just like kind of fun on paper. And the Niners and this was a year, it was open, it was there. Like, Green Bay pooped the bed against Philly, and all these teams
they were the team that should have come out of the NFC. They were 15-2 for a reason. There was a toughness there, and it just, between some of the play calling and then the personnel erosion, and then Goff just sort of melting down. Yeah,
and then lastly, last thing I'll say is, like, they're very 2023 Eagles next year. Feels like lose both coordinators. You felt like you had the best roster. You were going to win it all, and then, like, you don't. You lose everybody, and now it's like, oh boy, it might take 8 weeks to get going, but we might not get home field now, and now we're a dome team outside. And I didn't mention this in the Rams Eagles, but I will say the same thing. For McVay is a genius, and so is Ben Johnson, these other guys. I just don't get, like, McVay ran the ball up the middle against the biggest front in the NFL, like 8 times in short yardage, and it cost them the game. Like, the turnovers and all that stuff, but, like, it's just over and over again, bad calls on third down. And then, like, the Lions, listen, like, again, they're the opposite. They could have just been boring, and, like, they would have won.
Right.
It felt like, let me show off for Tom Brady, and then he doesn't even take the Raiders job. It was like
offensive coordinators like to show off.
Worse than.
Let's just run through this one quickly. Chiefs advance with a 23-14 win over the Texans. The Texans muddied it up. They definitely did in the first half. The way Will Anderson in particular was rushing was a handful for Joe Thuney and everybody else.
We talked about it. I said that's the only way they're going to keep it close.
Yep. But eventually, 8 sacks, 8 penalties, 3 missed kicks. Like, it just against the Chiefs at home. And I know there's a lot of people bitching and moaning about the penalties. Yeah. And the second one, when he was kind of okey doking and then slid late, that was a horrible. The one in the pocket, the first one, real time, it looked like it absolutely was the right call.
Yeah, it's annoying.
I just you know what? I don't understand. I don't understand what's the rule with the buzzing in from New York. Like, they buzz in sometimes, they don't buzz in other times.
I'm so
How does that make sense? How does that make sense?
This stems from,
if you see the replay, Will, right? You see that replay on the hit. I'm telling you, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, he hit him in the head. Yeah. And then you see the replay and you're like, no, he didn't. What are you doing?
Yeah. It's like, we can review everything, but we don't review everything. It's very, like, this happened this week 1. This is like my perfect example. Week 1, the Jets are getting smoked by the Niners, but Garrett Wilson has a catch out of bounds, and, like, they're trying to stage a comeback. And, New York buzzes in randomly and overturns it. But then Breece Hall, the play before, clearly gets the first down. They don't buzz in when he clearly gets. It's like, what do we do? Either be all like every play's reviewed or they're not. It's like one or the other, pick and choose. Look, I think Kansas City's been very uninspiring. I think Spagnuolo is the best coordinator in the sport. He's been that way for a long time. I think he'll have a plan for Josh Allen. I think if they win again, and like we talked about in the beginning of the year, like they have the best OC and the best DC in the sport and the best quarterback. It's kind of easy to figure out why they are able to win all these close games amidst the refs and all these other things. They don't beat themselves. They make kicks. They're good on special teams. They're sound with the football. And, oh, by the way, the refs are a joke when they're like, it's a perfect combination. It's very similar in a lot of ways to those Patriots teams where it's like they have the best quarterback. They have the best coach. They don't beat themselves. They're great at clock management. They have a great home atmosphere. It's all a perfect combination. And yeah, and Brady's going to whine a little bit and probably will get a roughing the passer and illegal contact. He shouldn't. The only difference is that, like, Brady, I feel like got a lot of those calls in Tampa at the end when the rules changed. Like, I don't feel like maybe the tuck rule, but I don't, even as a Jets fan, I don't remember I think it was a lot of like other Fugazi stuff. It felt like it wasn't necessarily just Brady. The Mahomes thing's frustrating. It's become a thing, and I'm glad people are starting to at least notice, like, flopping a lot. It's very frustrating to watch. And at some point, and I said this to you as soon as the Alshire thing happened in Jacksonville, and still no one's done it, and I'm glad I don't want Mahomes getting injured by any means. But at some point, some team is going to say, I'm just going to take the flag and I'm going to light you up because we're not going to keep doing this where we get penalized and you get off scot-free.
Well, you brought this up. You were on it. And this is something that I think when the competition committee meets this offseason, it's not going to be the first thing on their list, but it needs to be on their list. And the message needs to be sent to the quarterbacks loud and clear. Like, you can't do the slow down, okey doke, then speed up again. Like, you're a runner. And if you're going to do that and someone lights you up or hits you a half a yard out of bounds, we're not throwing the flag because you can't play it that way. You can't jerk those guys around and then think like we're going to protect you. Like, just be smarter about it, man. Just get out of bounds. Just get down. Don't get the extra 3 yards. Don't try to do that. Don't try to do that thing because you're asking to get, as you mentioned, you're asking to get hit. And if I was a defender, I'd be incredibly frustrated with that. And I would be looking to hit somebody. Again, not trying to be dirty, just not dirty, but like, if you're screwing around, I'm not going to let up on you. I'm going to run right through you.
Yeah. I can't believe Lamar didn't get a call yesterday going out of bounds. And obviously we'll wrap up and everything, but like Lamar didn't get that call because I felt like, in some ways, if you just play football and you don't make it so obvious, like they don't actually, the refs, I actually think sometimes they're like happy to like let them play a little bit. It's obviously hit or miss, the crew and the game and who's, there's all that. Credit to Troy and Joe. It's really hard, I think, in the spot they're in with the league employs you and these networks and it's how the league makes their money is the TV money. We all know that. Troy and Buck are really, they'll get on guys on the field, but they were crushing the officials. And I'm sure Aikman's like, dude, I have like 75 concussions from getting hit late. Like, how dare this dude get these calls? You earn the calls when you're a superstar. The league's going to protect the quarterbacks. But very similar to we'll finish with this, but very similar to the run earlier in the year against San Francisco from Mahomes, where it's like he fakes to go out of bounds and people don't hit him because they don't want a flag, and then he keeps running, and it's like this whole celebration of like, look how smart he is. And yeah, sure, he's smart. Good for him. And when LeBron does it and James Harden, these guys, like, sure. But it's on the league at some point to be like, dude, like you said, can't do it anymore. Or at some point, and I keep saying this, someone is going to say, I don't care. Like, I don't know, it's Chiefs Commanders in the Super Bowl, and Bobby Wagner's like, dude, I'm like a 77-time All-Pro. I can probably get away with this. I'm gonna probably a little extra and like not dirty, but if you're gonna do this crap, we're gonna go back to like old school until both feet are out of bounds. Like you're getting lit up. And so I just hope, I guess we can finish with this. I really hope on Sunday afternoon the refs are not a factor in Bills Chiefs. I do not want to come on here, Mike, in a week's time and talk about oh my God, the Chiefs got another call, or oh my God, Josh Allen flopped on a roughing the passer, and the Chris Jones didn't touch him, and look at this is a fraudulent win. Like, really, I'm truly begging that does not happen, because if the calls are like that, they were in that Chiefs-Texans game, either the Bills or the Chiefs, whoever they go for, are going to be. It's going to be just it's just. I don't want to talk about the refs. It's so frustrating, and it ruins such a fun. It was a good game, actually. It was a good, entertaining game, and all we just finished and we talked about, hey, the Chiefs did it again, but like, other than Will Anderson, the talking points, the refs and the Texans have no kicker. Like, it's annoying.
Quickly before we go, multiple reports: Jaguars bringing in several candidates for a second head coaching interview, including Liam Cohen, Raiders DC Patrick Graham, and former Jets coach Robert Saleh. Also, the
Patriots hired like a strength and conditioning guy from the Titans.
Yeah, which is not shocking. And Lou Anarumo, the new DC for the Indianapolis Colts, taking over for the fired Gus Bradley. So that's, you want to talk about making a sharp turn into how you play defense, going from Gus to Lou. That's pretty sharp. All right, he is Will Parkinson. He's always sharp. I'm Mike Giardi. It's mostly dull. Remember to like, listen, subscribe, tell your friends, rate, review. Get this podcast wherever you get your podcast. Plus, of course, here on YouTube. We will see you at the end of the week as we preview the AFC and NFC Championship games. See you.